Well, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a big week for the Brisbane Lions and the state of Queensland. Of course, the Lions winning their first AFL Premiership since 2003 on the weekend, beating the Swans by 60 points. It was an absolutely dominant display. They are worthy premiers. And as a result of that, the people of Brisbane have really been embracing the Lions as you would expect, and really as they have done for the past 5 or 6 years when they have got back into the AFL finals. They have been selling out the Gabba more often than not. And we did see around 5,000 people packing the streets of Brisbane on Tuesday afternoon for the celebration of their premiership. And it has really reignited the discussion about whether Brisbane needs a new stadium for both Aussie rules and cricket. Of course, there is also the discussion about the Olympic Stadium with the Olympics coming up in Brisbane in 2032. And the Lions have come out in the last week or so and really put it on the public record. They want a new stadium. The Lions CEO Greg Swan presented to both the Liberal and Labor parties recently and said that we need a new stadium. They also had cricket on board, also saying we need a new stadium, we need to get out of the Gabba. It is too small, it is obsolete, the facilities aren't up to standard for the city of Brisbane. It is the third biggest city, of course, in Australia, and it's really now a united push from the local AFL and cricket scenes coming out and lobbying hard for this new stadium. Now, the Lions did sell out 10 of their 12 home games at the Gabba in 2024. They do average crowds in the high 20s, and a lot of the time they are cracking 30k at the Gabba. Capacity around 36, 37k in its current configuration. Of course, that is smaller for cricket when you do have the sight screens. And they've come out and said we do want a 50k plus stadium so we can sell more tickets, so we can get more revenue in the gate, so we can get more fully ticketed members through the turnstiles. And they have also said we do want to build the stadium at Victoria Park. Now, this was a proposal put together earlier in the year when the government backed out of the plan to renovate the Gabba for the Olympics. They commissioned a report, and the report said we need to build a $3.4 billion stadium in Victoria Park, which is a sort of public parkland, sort of nature area right next to the CBD in Brisbane. Ultimately, the findings of that report commissioned by the Labor government were ignored by the government, and they said we are going to redevelop the QASC, the Queensland Sports and Athletics Centre, around 12 kilometres south of the city. It was the 1982 Commonwealth Games venue. It was also the home of the Brisbane Broncos in the 1990s and early 2000s. Completely obsolete stadium. They did say we're going to renovate that. We are going to expand the stadium for the Olympics to a capacity of around 40k, but it will be basically a temporary stadium and it will revert back to a 14,000 seat athletic centre after the Olympic Games. And that has proved very unpopular with both the people in Brisbane and really the Australian public. It is embarrassing to host the Olympics in such a dilapidated and frankly embarrassing stadium. And of course, the price tag of $1.6 billion for what is basically a temporary stadium is completely ridiculous. So the Lions saying we do want to go to Victoria Park. The Gabba is landlocked. It is in a residential neighbourhood. You do have streets basically on two sides of the ground. You do also have a school right next to it. So they would just prefer to start from scratch, go with the Optus Stadium model. You can set up all the infrastructure around it. You can get the places for people to congregate, and the ease of movement in terms of people getting in and out of the ground is a lot easier than when you're building in a built-up neighbourhood. And the Lions have also said we are in dialogue with the private sector, and we do want to come to some sort of agreement where the stadium would be half private and half publicly funded. Of course, we did have the $6 billion stadium proposal for the Olympic Games. It would be fully privately owned and built. That never really went anywhere. It was a pretty out there design. It was kind of abstract and a little bit weird. I don't think that was ever a real chance. But the push now that the Lions have won the flag is extremely strong. We even had the mayor of Brisbane coming out at the Victory Parade saying he is getting stopped on the streets all the time, asking what's the future of the stadium. They know the Gabba is capped out at capacity more often than not when it comes to the Lions games. And the mayor also saying they could have sold more tickets to the Lions, they could have had more fans coming in to see a game live, but they were capped. So as support continues to grow, as our city continues to grow, what is the future? If they don't have a permanent home and they can't accommodate that growth, what will that do to the Lions in the future? It's not a future we want to consider. We want to see them continuing to grow and continuing to succeed. And that is, of course, a direct quote from the Mayor of Brisbane. So it has definitely been a big month for Queensland and Brisbane, and we do have the state election coming up on October 26, so only around 3 weeks away. Most people now expecting the Liberal National Party is expected to win. They are up in the polls. In terms of the betting, we do have the Coalition at a $1.05 favourite versus $11 for the Labor Party. So almost certainly we will have a Liberal government in place in the state of Queensland by next month. And the Liberals have got no official position on the stadium, whether they go to Victoria Park, whether they do the Gabba, or whether they do go with the QASC proposal. They have criticised the Labor Party for abandoning the proposed Gabba renovation. That was the original plan for the Brisbane Olympics. It was budgeted at $2.7 billion. It would be around a 55k stadium. But that was, of course, abandoned by the Labor Party. And the Liberals have really been hammering home how badly the Labor Party has managed the upcoming Olympics in terms of the infrastructure. The stadium plan is poor, but they have offered no official position at this point going into the election. They don't really need to. They are going to win. You don't really need to throw people offside. You'd rather just sit on the fence. They are saying we're going to do a 100-day review of the whole Olympics and then make a plan in terms of the stadium, whether we pivot back to one of the previous two proposals or proceed with the QASC. I think most people at this point expect they do go back to Victoria Park after this review and proceed with that $3.4 billion stadium build. It is a lot of money. It would easily be the biggest stadium project ever done in Australia. But it is important to note it's not just for the Olympics. It is also for the Lions. It is also for cricket. We know the Gabba, in terms of the Test cricket pecking order, is sitting at around number 5 now. They are missing a test in a few summers' time when there is only going to be a 4-test series in the Australian summer. You do also have the Brisbane Heat in the T20 and also the limited overs international stuff. But we are not going to get an official position from the opposition in Queensland before the election, no doubt about that. And there was an interesting quote from the current Infrastructure Minister, Grace, yes, that is her real name, in the Queensland Labor Party. And she said, quote, "We know the LNP is refusing to support QASC because they're secretly planning to spend $3.4 billion plus on a new build stadium at Victoria Park." Now that is just a quote, but it is interesting to hear that narrative from the government, and it does give a lot of validity to the idea that the Liberal Party is going to pivot back to that Victoria Park proposal. And it sounds like that is going to be the preference for the Brisbane Lions and also cricket in the state of Queensland. That is going to be all we're going to have time for today, guys. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more.